This is a great lesson for entrepreneurs, right? So this guy came in with this really cool app, worked with an iPhone 5, and it just turned around and take panoramic pictures and then stitch them together, and it was a cool picture. Well, so I give him $250,000, I think, for 20% of the company or 25% of the company. Not 4 months later, Apple changes the iPhone. And it's got this like rounded thing underneath, and we're like, oh, what are we gonna do? But the guy was smart. And one of the things I always look for companies coming in is, what's your unique advantage? What is the one thing you have that differentiates you from other companies? And for this guy, the product was interesting, but as I said on the show, the ability to program video and use what became computer vision was a unique skill that was hard to find. And so we worked with him and actually worked with him to bring in another CEO, and they used that same technology to be able to scan cars. So now if you go to websites like Carvana to buy a car and you see how you can turn the car around just right there, that started with their software. And the guy's name is Bruno. So Bruno, we just sold his company for $22.5 million a couple weeks ago. And so I walked away with 25% of that. So I was like, yeah, Shark Tank.
Working as a bartender at night, what did I have to lose?
Right.
And so it wasn't like, oh man, I could lose all this. And so,
yeah.
And so it was just like, you just go for it. Now, later on, after I'd had some success and we got back and we started AudioNet, which turned into broadcast.com, the math was different. The equations, the calculus was different. It was like, okay, I'm investing a lot of my saved money into this whole idea of netcasting, right? Or internet broadcasting in early 1995, when people didn't even know what the internet was. That was all risk, because I literally was putting everything that I had on the line for something. People just laughed at me and said, wait, audio over the internet. You can turn on the radio. You can turn on a TV. Yeah, but you don't get it. No, that's just dumb, all right? And so being able to overcome all that resistance, because remember back then, A, you had to have a PC, B, you had to know what a modem was and install it. C, you had to know what the internet was, and then you had to download a TCP/IP client that worked over a modem and then connected to a browser that you probably didn't even know what it was or how to download it. And we had to take it on faith that all this was going to grow.
Well, one of my buddies, Howard Tallman, says it best. He goes, you got to nail it before you scale it. If your company doesn't work, making it big won't solve your problems, it'll just add to your problems.
We're going to get to a point where decisions are made individually on arbitrage of time, right? We'll value our time, you'll value your time. That's the whole Uber economy, right? Where people say, what's it worth? We do that now.
We do.
What's it worth for me versus I can hire somebody, right? And that somebody can be for 10 minutes, that somebody can be for 10 hours. It could be for 2 seconds. Like a couple of my companies, we have scripts now for Mechanical Turk on Amazon where it might cost us a penny to label things.
Really?
Oh, it's crazy, right? I invested in the company because the guy was a computer vision genius. All he does is hand puppets. So you do like this, hand puppets like you do with your kids when you're little, right?
Right.
Only it digitizes it using AI, because he has to write computer vision and AI scripts that say, okay, this is a knuckle, here's a second knuckle, here's the thumb, right? And I'm going to recognize
shows it spatially. Yeah.
Right, and all that stuff is advanced computer vision. But it all goes back to, hiring people based off the value of their time. When I make decisions, build versus buy, robotics are now part of the decision. It's, what's the most cost-effective way? What's going to give me the best return? What's going to be the path of least resistance for me effectively?
Yeah.
And now it's not just, okay, who can I hire? It's,
all right,
what can I hire? In my mind, it wasn't about, I wanted to create this huge company. I remember telling our employees, we're going to change, I want to be the next Ted Turner. I want to just change television. I want to change media. I want all media to be driven online, that it's going to be crazy to think that there aren't going to be more choices online than there are TV. People are going to upload user-generated content, and that's going to change the world, and not the world, the country. I wasn't thinking that big. But more important to me then was my personal freedom. Right? The one thing my dad has always driven me, the one thing you can't own is time. And the one thing you can't get back is time. And while the part of me wanted an amazing world-class company, a bigger part of me just wanted to see the world. and just experience the world and just love life and just enjoy life. And that was more important to me, and that's what the money enabled. And that's why that's why I hedged my stock. I didn't need more, I just wanted more time, because that was everything to me. And so when I talk to entrepreneurs, you have to make a decision what's important to you. Time to go out and do whatever, be whoever you are, help whoever you want to help, raise your family, whatever it is, or do you want to create a world-class company? What is your goal? And you have to understand your goals, and there should always be a price. If it is about selling at some point, what's the price?
Starting all over again, I still think you can kick their ass, right?
You do?
Yes,
okay.
Because I think on the margin, you can't, even at that scale, even with all the AI that they both use, there's still on the margin places to make money where they're inefficient. Because it's still vertical, and it still takes time to get to the edges. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities for small companies to come in, and you're seeing a lot of that now. Like you see growth hacks on Kickstarter, where I have one of my companies, a Shark Tank company, that all they do, their whole entire business now is just releasing products on Kickstarter, delivering them, and then going on to the next product.
Okay.
And it's just a pure growth hack. There's other companies that they measure what's selling the best on Amazon, and then they go out and buy those products, brand them, and sell just on Amazon and buy Amazon. It's just its own little ecosystem where kids are, I try to give this kid some money, right? Literally, because he was so good at it, didn't need it. He was already making, $1 million a year, working an hour a day just by tracking Amazon.
Really?
Yeah, and it's just, so you can be smart because they're so big.
You're going to have at least, if not more, cursory understanding of artificial intelligence, because it will change everything we do. And if the internet was 10x in terms of change to business, artificial intelligence will be 100x or more. So there's going to be a disruption and change in the types of jobs. That's going to impact your customers. That's going to impact your businesses. That's going to impact the future of business. And so I don't want to be, I want to be as clear and as forceful as I possibly can, because as fellow entrepreneurs, we always have to try to look for an edge. We always have to understand how our industry is changing. We always have to understand not only how we differentiate ourselves in our companies, but I always want to know who can kick my ass, right? In all my businesses, who can kick my ass, and can I kick my own ass first? Because if you can disrupt yourself first, the person who could otherwise do it is not going to do it, and you can compete and be successful. So pay attention to AI. It's important.
We all have that idea inside of us. We've all been through it. Oh, I got this idea. It's a great idea. And you get all excited. You get that feeling in your stomach, right? And then you go to Google and you Google, oh, there's nobody else doing this. Then you call your friends. You go, what do you think? What do you think? Oh, that is really cool. I'd buy one. And then most people stop. What's for dinner? But some people, they found their way to turn those into companies, and they found their way onto Shark Tank. And we got to see examples of people from any little town in anywhere in the country with backgrounds that weren't from some big Ivy League school. Maybe you didn't go to college at all. Maybe it was their last dollar and they started it up and they were desperate to get an investment, but they started it. And we showed examples of people who were willing to take that first step and start that company and where it could go. And I think that really, and to this day, really excites people and encourages them and really shows them that there can be an upside. And on the flip side, there can be failure too. And so you have to be realistic about what can happen.
Lots of companies come in and say, I have a great idea, or I have a company and we've got some sales, but we only need to do this and we only need to do that. And you talk to them and you talk to the entrepreneur, and I'm like, why aren't you selling? This is your whole company. There's never been a company in the history of companies to survive without sales. And so I think, now as more and more people watch Shark Tank, they're seeing it. But if you can't sell, if it's your company and you can't sell, you're not going to be in business long, particularly when you're starting up and it's just you. And sales is not something you can give to somebody else and say, okay, I'm just going to hire salespeople. Michael Humecki, remember that guy I told you about that fired me for handing him the check? He was the guy who he was the CEO and owner. He would never sell. He thought he could just bring us in and sell it. And the company failed afterwards. You got to sell.
I had watched in the 80s, these PC companies go bam, bam, Eagle Computing, names you wouldn't even remember, go bam, bam, bam. Then I watched software company, WordPerfect, Ashton Tate, WordStar, all these companies bam. And then networking companies. I mean, it didn't take a genius to say, wow, this might happen again. And so the first thing I did the minute we sold, I wasn't allowed to put on a collar for 6 months because of the laws. And so what I was allowed to do was find an index, an internet index that didn't have Yahoo as more than 5%. I took every penny that I had, literally every single penny that I had, and bought puts on that index that got me to the point where I could put on my collar. I lost 90% of those puts, but I was able to put on my collar on the other side